This is Ortegas. Ortegas is my 2023 Ford F-150 Lightning Lariat. Yes, a vehicle that is sadly no longer in production. And I say sadly because despite this vehicle being pretty large and all of the inherent questions that many of us have about the need for such large vehicles, I actually use it as a pickup truck. When we're doing a long distance road trip to go and film something with the crew, we pile all the gear in the back, and sometimes even on those racks behind me, we put the crew in the cab and off we trot. When we are in and around our local studio here in the Portland, Oregon area and we have a press car, Ortegas comes along as well. We attach a specially made, in fact we made it ourselves, mount that goes on the hitch that allows us to connect a gimbal to the back, and on top of the gimbal sits a very nice camera. In fact, the camera that I'm using to film this right now. It allows us to get super smooth, beautiful shots that we've become pretty well known for. But there's a problem. See, when we are setting up that camera hitch, we regularly need to get into the back of the truck. And if there's something hitched here, it kind of makes it difficult to lower the tailgate. And while the tailgate does have its own integrated step, it's really easy to deploy. You press a button, you pull it down, and if you want to have the little handle, just so that you're in compliance with health and safety, there you go. But we can't use these steps when we're filming rolling shots because, well, the tailgate would damage the camera rig. And so we've been investigating the possibility of using some kind of side step arrangement, because while it is possible to jump in the back of the truck without using a side step, as some of you will know, our camera person Vi recently damaged their back, an old injury that's come back to haunt them. And while, yes, okay, theoretically I can put my foot here and get up inside the bed, it's not necessarily pleasant. So when WOLFBOX reached out and said, hey, we've got a product we'd like you to try, I said, okay. Before I get too far into today's video, it's important to put a disclaimer up. First of all, this video is marked by YouTube as being sponsored, and that normally means that someone is getting money from a company in order to promote something. In this case, it's marked as sponsored because WOLFBOX sent us this unit, which is worth about $200, free of charge in order for us to install it and test it and tell you about it in an unbiased, uninfluenced review. And when I say uninfluenced, while WOLFBOX did send us this product to test and we get to keep it, they don't get to see our review until you do. No editorial control is being given to them. And so if you remember a couple of weeks ago when I talked about how we're going to be handling sponsored videos versus reviews, this one is most definitely a review, although YouTube regulations require us to mark it as sponsored. I know, it's complicated. To the unboxing. WOLFBOX has sent this product through its US store to us, and this is the first time that I'm opening it up, so you'll get to see it the same time I do. First up, an installation instructions. Now, full disclaimer, we did ask WOLFBOX to send us these installation instructions in advance to make sure that we had all of the tools that we needed and we understood the installation procedure. As you can see, it's very simple, and interestingly, this product will work on both the F-150 Lightning and also ICE variants of the F-150. Obviously, being Transport Evolved, most of you won't need to know that. Now, the packaging here is fairly high quality, but you know, this is difficult to recycle in many markets, so they do get a point down from us for that. But the actual bed step itself is well produced and well made. And it's a fairly heavy, hefty piece of kit. There are some pretty nice holes here. We'll come to that in a second. What makes this bed step interesting is that it is fully retractable. So there's a mechanism here with a spring that allows you to kick it underneath the truck when you're not using it, and then use your foot to pull it out so you can step on the side when you need to. This is all one unit, but there are some other parts that we will need to assemble together. Also in the box, nicely wrapped up, you have the actual step itself, the bit you stand on, and it is separate from the mechanism, and that's because you need to be able to adjust it so that It's adjusted to your preference, but also so that it looks right on your truck. There are slight differences between every vehicle in terms of mounting, so this is just easier. And of course, it also allows WOLFBOX to use just one component across all of its side step variants, because WOLFBOX, like most aftermarket suppliers, makes a whole range of these steps for different vehicles. Some more of that horrible, not super easy to recycle padding here, and then we have the rest of it comes in this box. Now, WOLFBOX does make a whole range of different products for different vehicles, and as I said in the introduction, this particular step for the F-150 Lightning has a retail value of about $199 US. Let's have a look and see what else is in the box. The mounting mechanism comes in two separate parts, and you have to bolt them together. So this is the smaller part, and then in here, alongside those gloves that I just pulled out, which are kind of cute. I don't know why. For everything from musical instruments to parts for your car, if you order it from China, you're bound to get a pair of gloves. For those who don't know, I used to be a music teacher, and instruments that came from either Japan or China always used to have a pair of white gloves in them, which always used to make me laugh. What else is in the box? Ah, yes, the mounting hardware. This is exactly what you need. And if you look in the manual, it tells you exactly what each part is. I'm going to go through, I'm going to make sure that all of these parts are correct and make sure that all of the parts are in fact what they should be. So we have a T-bolt. We should have 4 of those, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we should have some of these combo bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to have 2 longer bolts, 1 shorter bolt, and then some more mounting hardware. So we've got washers, we've got spring washers, and then we've got some nuts. It all looks good. Let's put it together. One of the reasons why I asked WOLFBOX to send me a PDF of the installation manual ahead of schedule was because I wanted to make sure that we had all of the tools necessary here at the studio in order to install this. And one of the cool things about this retractable side step is it is a no-drill solution, meaning that you can put it on your vehicle, you can use it, and then if you sell your vehicle or anything else, you want to change something up further down the line, you can remove it and revert your vehicle to stock. And if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll know that I am a big fan of solutions that are as close to stock as possible. Either that they look stock or they use stock components, and they most definitely are no drill. And if you're watching some of the fog light stuff that we've got planned, you'll know that we've done that to this point wherever possible. So I'm going to need various different tools. So I need a ratchet or 2. I need a large 24mm socket, as well as a pretty long bar for leverage, because this install does require me to remove 2 nuts that are on the rear bumper, and they're chunky for a reason, and they're pretty tight. So I did get underneath the truck before I hit record just to loosen them a bit, because you don't want to see me struggling to undo a couple of nuts. I've also got a socket set here, and I've also got some spanners or wrenches if you're in America, to make sure that I can tighten everything up properly. All right, let's follow the instructions. So the first thing I need to do is I need to take these 2 components and I need to connect them together like so. Now this is a 13mm socket you need to tighten these up, and the instructions do say to not do them all the way up, because you need to be able to adjust it when it's underneath the vehicle. I will say that to do this one up, you might have some clearance issues, but luckily I do have a spanner, so I can do that up with a spanner and tighten it up under the vehicle. But for now, I think that's good enough. The next thing we have to do is get under the truck, and I'm afraid there's not a lot of space. Okay, so here's where things get just a little messy. So we're going to have to undo these 2 nuts here, and we're going to have to remove these 2 bolts. Now these 2 bolts will not be reused, but obviously it makes sense to keep them somewhere safe, just in case you want to revert this back to stock at some point in the future. I'm going to start by taking these big boys off, and as I noted earlier, I did kind of cheat. I already loosened them. Two things that the installation booklet does not tell you, which I find quite interesting, is it doesn't seem to have any opinion on whether you use Loctite or anything like that. I'm not going to use Loctite for this install, but I may come back at some point in the future and install some Loctite, but make sure you clean those threads because they get kind of dirty. The other important thing to note is that you do not want to undo this one because this one is also holding your bumper on. So as long as you've got one point of contact at this point, you should be fine, but don't go messing around. Once you've taken off your two big chunking 24mm nuts, you're going to take these bolts out. And as I say, WOLFBOX says you don't need them, but I keep them around just in case. We're now at the point where we can put the loosely assembled step support bracket in place. You're just going to slide them over those two big bolts at the top there, and then you're going to put the supplied 8mm bolts in their 8x30mm. As is usually the case, you want to put your spring washer on, then your flat washer, and just hand tighten it in place. For now, I'm not going to cinch these super tight, but I am going to get them reasonably tight. And one thing that you might want to get that I haven't brought outside, but I do have, is a nice long extension bar so that you can tighten it from the other side of the step frame. The other thing I'll note here is that there aren't any torque bolts settings for this particular part, but if you want to be super careful, maybe use the original torque wrench settings that are in your owner's manual for both this and this. Because these two hold my bumper on, I'm going to go ahead and just use a bit of extra leverage here to tighten these up. I will say, if you're going to be working underneath your truck, it might be advantageous to have some safety goggles on. I did just get farm dirt in my eye. Joy. Now this is in position, I am going to go ahead and tighten this up a little bit more. And then for the other one, I'm going to go and get a proper spanner or wrench. Nice afternoon for it. So I've readjusted the camera so this is better in focus. Apologies for that. I've also tightened up these two nuts and tightened up all these 4 bolts. And as you can see, this frame is really rigid. WOLFBOX says the step can support up to 330 pounds, just under 150 kilograms. I've actually got the step extended right now because this is going to facilitate the installation. If I rotate this, you can see there's 1, 2, 3 holes here that will line up with this. And then I'm just going to drop the bolts from above. Now, I'm not going to lie, I have pretty big hands. So getting my hands in here has not been particularly easy, but it's not the most difficult thing I've ever done. Let's see if we can line up these holes and start things off. I'm going to drop this one in first. Now, these two have integrated washers and spring washers on them. This one is just a standard bolt. As usual, you put your spring washer on and then your flat washer. This one should be reasonably easy to get in, because I can actually see the hole and I can see where it's supposed to go. There we go. For reasons I'm not sure of, WOLFBOX says to install this bit before you put this on. I'm honestly not convinced. Okay, that's one on. Let's see if I can get 2 of these others on. That's 2. See if I can get this 3rd one in. Despite my concern that I wasn't going to make that work, I did, and I'm glad that I've got this nice long socket because it gives me a little bit more room to tighten this. For the two rear ones, I'm going to have to use a slightly smaller socket because otherwise I'll hit some of the wiring harness that is under the rear of the truck here. Yep, I think that is jobs are good. And as you can see, the step just drops back out and then tucks underneath. Now let's put the step on. The final part of the installation process is to take this step here. It's going to sit like that on the vehicle. So what we now need to do is put these T-bolts in like so. We're going to put 2 in on the bottom and then 2 in on the top. I followed the picture in the instructions, so it's saying put them on like that, and then when you flip them around, it should be that the 2 closest to the edge of the bed are in the center, and the 2 furthest away are towards the back. Nuts on each. Again, washers, there are enough washers to go around. Washers and a nylock nut. And the idea is that you align it so that the back of the bumper is where the step is, and the edge of the bumper is where the step is. And then you've got this little bit here that you can just put your foot on and pull down. I'm doing it by eye right now, but I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up just to see how it feels. WOLFBOX does caution that this little roller here, as you can see, there's a little ball bearing here and a little race for the wheel to go into. It can get gunked up with mud and other stuff, so you need to make sure you keep this channel clean and clear. If you live out in the boonies like I do, you may want to keep an eye on that, but let's test it out in full operation. So there you have it. This is the WOLFBOX Retractable Bed Step. It does make it a lot easier to get into the back of our F-150 Lightning. This was sitting on the bed floor and I was able to reach it with nary a problem. And it means that I can get into the back of this truck without putting the tailgate down. Now, most of the time that's not an issue because most of the time I don't have a trailer on the back or a camera rig. But when I do have a trailer or a camera rig and I don't want to drop this tailgate, and yes, I've dented pickup tailgates before by pulling them down when something was on the hitch, this is the perfect solution. What would I give the installation process? Well, it's really well thought out. I wish that WOLFBOX had put in some torque wrench settings. I wish that it encouraged you to use some Loctite or something similar to make sure that the bolts were properly tightened and stayed that way. And as with any installation, when you put something like this on yourself, it is up to you to make sure that it stays tight and properly installed and that you follow all of the instructions. That said, the instructions are really easy to follow. The pictures were very clear. I didn't have any doubts that I was doing something incorrectly. Moving forwards, if I was to do this again, I'd probably install the actual step onto the bracket before installing the bracket onto the truck. I understand why it was done this way around, but if you have larger hands, it is a bit of a pain in the butt. And having that extra tall socket really did save the day. The other thing, obviously, is you need to make sure that you have regular maintenance to make sure that you don't gunk the step up. Would I recommend it? Well, let's see how I feel about it in a couple of months' time. But right now, yeah, for $200, it's a pretty decent investment. Thanks for watching the video today, and thanks again to WOLFBOX for sending us this review unit. Make sure that you hit subscribe and that bell so that you can follow us as we give you an update on this, and also an update on our little pet project, well, my pet project, which is putting rear fog lights and front fog lights onto this truck. We've got some other great content planned over the next couple of months, so if you want to see more, you know where to go. Thanks to the amazing list of supporters scrolling by on either side of me right now. They are the reason that we are still able to do this kind of video. And if you would like to join them from $1.50 a month, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/transportevolved or by joining us on YouTube. Don't forget too that if you don't like YouTube, and I know many of you don't, you can also watch our content completely ad-free and federated on PeerTube. And in a similar vein, you can reach out to us on Mastodon. You can join our Discord chat room or our brand new Fluxer chat room. I know that the invite link for Fluxer has expired. Don't worry, we'll be adding a new one very shortly. In the meantime, tell the important people in your world that they're important to you. Thank you for being the positive change that we need to see in the world right now. And as always, keep evolving.